Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. I don't know if you saw my last video, but I guess that didn't take long. If you didn't watch it, I was talking about my belief that we may see a lot of big changes during President Oak's presidency. Because I talked about something that Elder Bednar had said, how revelation is received by whoever the president of the church is at that time, but it's not necessarily implemented right away. It goes through a process, and sometimes it comes in phases before it's fully implemented. And how the things that took place during President Nelson's presidency, especially toward the beginning, a lot of those things may have already been in the works before his time. Um, some of that stuff some of the revelation may have come through President Monson, but we didn't see it until President Nelson. And with President Nelson being so focused on the second coming and getting so much done, I can only imagine the revelation that he was receiving and the things that he was thinking about and planning that we will now see with President Oaks, possibly whoever the president of the church is after that, or in the millennium, however it all plays out. And so the way that it worked was I recorded that video, and then I published it the next day. At the time I'm recording this for you, it was yesterday. It was my last video. And after it was published, I think about an hour later, because I published my videos at 10 a.m. Central Time. I think it was an hour later, there was an announcement from the first presidency that they're lowering the mission age for sister missionaries. Now they can serve missions at 18 years old, just like the men. That's a really big change, and I have a lot of thoughts about that. But before we get into that, I have to show you a few things. This has been such a strange year for me. There have been so many things that have happened this year, but I want to point a couple things out. Okay, so let's go back to July 29th of this year. I was doing a video about a new Liahona article. I can't remember what I was talking about in that video, but we were looking at President Oak's April 2004 General Conference talk about the Second Coming. That was like to date, his biggest Second Coming talk in General Conference. And at this part, at like the 21 minute and 31 second mark, I started talking about earthquakes because President Oaks gave this numbered list of signs of the times to look for, including earthquakes. That's number 4 on the list. And one thing that I track on this channel is earthquakes, and, especially big ones, because that's going to be a more powerful sign is if you have a huge earthquake. And I was talking about the fact that up until this point, July 29th of this year, we hadn't seen any 8.0 earthquakes for a while. Just look at the transcript over here on the right. At 21:54, it says, but one thing that I'm keeping track of is we have not seen an 8.0 earthquake in a few years. And I'd have to go to the spreadsheet, but let's say that the last time that we saw it was, I don't know, like 2022 or 2021. Before that point, you had them about every other year. So I was just pointing out how we're probably due for an 8.0. Well, guess what happened later that day? I was checking the comments, and I got comments like this one. This is Kylie B2977. He totally jinxed us with we're due for a major earthquake this year. People were pointing out, hey, here's your 8.0 earthquake. So I did a follow-up video. Sorry, I did a follow-up video. We looked at the USGS earthquake map, and here it is, an 8.8 off the coast of Russia. So that was odd. And then later, this was August 6th of this year. This was pretty early on. Once I had started my new channel called Explore Church Sites, I was really trying to hunt down the different things to see. And I didn't know about this sidewalk marker at the temple lot. It's one of my favorite things to visit. I love this marker that's in the sidewalk. But I took a video, posted it on Facebook August 6th, and then I posted a video, like a full-length video on Explore Church Sites the next day. But guess what happened on the day after I recorded that on August 7th? The man that owns the mold of that sidewalk marker, he turned it into the church along with other, I guess, like documents and artifacts. Here it is right here. Here's the mold. That is the most random thing. I discover for me for the first time the sidewalk marker, one of my favorite things to see. And then the next day, the man that owns the mold turns it into the church history museum. And then I made a video about it. And then just a couple months ago, well, no, when was this? Yeah, it was like late September, early October. We made a trip to Utah, me and my family. I got permission to record inside the conference center. And here I am, where you have all the different busts of all the presidents of the church. And this is the first video that I made after learning that President Nelson had passed away. Of all times for us to do our Utah trip, I was in Utah when he passed away. I wasn't planning on doing any live streams or regular videos while I was there, but I did a live stream, and I think for the purposes of this channel and getting the message out there and all of us stopping and thinking about the how profound that was, I think that me actually being there helped highlight that, because it's just so unlikely. Why am I sharing this with you? I'm sharing it with you because I feel like when things like this happen in your life, there's signs to let you know that you're on the right track. Because there's so many times that I get discouraged about doing YouTube. It's very easy to get demotivated, demoralized. There's all sorts of negative forces acting upon you. And so I need things like this from time to time, just as an assurance to keep going, and that what I'm doing is worth it. I love it when stuff like this happens. I love it when I'm in sync with another content creator. There's so many times that like me and Caitlin, or me and Troy, or me and Jen happen to touch on the same topic on the same day without communicating with each other. And especially like when it's just like a random topic, like we're all going to cover breaking news, all of us. But sometimes there's just these random topics that we choose to cover without any coordination to our knowledge. But then later we find out, yes, there was coordination, and there was probably some reason why we made that video on the same day. So I think that we should always stop and think about these things, document them. I'm sure that you've had these type of things before in your own life. Nothing's coincidence with the Lord. But here we are. Here's another one. Big changes. Now the mission age has been lowered for sister missionaries. And I think that this is huge. Why do I think it's huge? Well, let's go to, let's see. Let's go to the actual announcement. Let's read it. This is on Newsroom on the church website. Women can now serve missions for the Church of Jesus Christ at age 18 by the First Presidency. The First Presidency is pleased to announce that effective immediately, young women who choose to serve a full-time mission may begin their service at age 18, following graduation from high school or its equivalent. While the Lord asks every worthy, able young man as part of his priesthood responsibility, and that's important. If any of you are listening to this on your parents' YouTube account, please keep this in mind. If you're a young man, it is a priesthood responsibility, and it will bless your life. It'll be one of the best things that you ever do. It was for me, for sure. Okay. While the Lord asks every worthy, able young man as part of his priesthood responsibility to prepare for and serve a mission, we reiterate that missionary service remains an optional opportunity for young women. We recognize that for those young women who desire to serve a full-time mission, the choice of age to begin service will not be the same for everyone. We extend our love to the youth of the church and commend them for their faithfulness. Okay, I think that this is a really big thing because I think it fits in with this idea that we're in the final phase. When it comes down to it, I feel like this is the final push. I've expressed that opinion multiple times on the channel. And actually, it starts with President Nelson. Let's go back to 2022. There was a pre-recorded message for the youth, for Strength of Youth. And he said, using a baseball analogy, we are in the last half of the ninth inning. When the game's on the line, I'm skipping around. That is his agenda for this final inning. And when you know who you really are, you'll have the courage to enlist in the Lord's battalion and to help gather Israel for the rest of your life. Now, this is actually kind of a follow-up from his first year as president of the church, during the Worldwide Youth Devotional, where he introduced the concept of the Lord's Youth Battalion. And I don't think it was just a motivational thing. I think it really is essentially the last team on this side of the second coming. I think it's the last team. I think it's the transition team as we transition from the world before the second coming to the millennium and the large influx that is expected of new converts. We're going to have all hands on deck. So you see why I think that up until this point, the church has basically said, okay, young women, you can go on a mission if you want to. And up until recently, I think the focus was more, try and get married and start your families, but you can do it if you feel inspired to. We're not going to hold you back, but we would like you to wait until you're 21. And then later, the mission age was lowered, I think, to 19, right? Isn't that how it went in 2012? It was lowered to 19. But now, going down to 18, it feels like an all hands on deck situation. We know that the church is experiencing a lot of growth right now. There's probably a lot of different factors at play, maybe not just a singular factor, but we know that the church is growing really quickly right now. We're having record-breaking numbers in terms of convert baptisms. But I can't help but to think of other things like this. Let's fast forward all the way to this year, July 15th. This is the former President Stephen J. Lund, Young Men General President. And let's see, at this part, oh gosh, see, when I change the screen size, here it is. But okay, so he says, but President Nelson told us just this most interesting thing. He said, every prophet from Adam through the ages until today has looked forward to this time when these generations would be born into the world, having come here with special gifts to be about the most important thing going on in the world today. He describes the gathering as being the most important thing. And then we go out and he said something like this. The prior prophets have looked forward to this time, when sometime in the foggy future that this gathering would take place. We don't talk that way now. He says, quote unquote, because the gathering is now, it is in full process right now. So it's in full process. You hear people sometimes out there, other people on social media saying like, oh, this isn't the real gathering. And it involves all these other groups. Everything is done under the direction of the president of the church, him using his priesthood keys to direct the work. If you're talking about the Jews, guess what? That gathering started with the dedicatory prayer of the Kirtland Temple. And then that was kind of like the initiating event, but then even more so when Orson Hyde went to the Holy Land in 1841 and was physically there and dedicated the land for the return of the Jews. There's not some other secret or big gathering. It's in full process for both the Jews and all the rest of the world. Be careful who you listen to. But okay, so it's in full process right now. And even more so now that the mission age has been lowered. Think about this. Think about what happened. You know, I should have pulled this up. Let's go to timeline missionaries or missionary work. If we go down to the year 2012, that's the year that President Monson announced the lowering of the mission age. And what happened after that? Immediately after that, there was a spike in missionaries. There was a surge. And you can see that in these numbers right here in yellow. Okay. Column E is the number of full-time teaching missionaries. So it went from about 59,000 all the way up to 83,000. And then the next year, 85,000. Okay. So that was pretty dramatic. Let's fast forward to President Nelson. I think it was I want to say it was April of 2022. That was the General Conference where he did a big call out for missionaries. I don't know if it was that year or if it was 2023. Like I said, I forgot to include this in the video. But what happened was, according to Elder Cook and others, there's been a big response by the youth. There are more people serving missions. So we're having another surge. Now think about this. We just had another lowering of the mission age, even if it's just for sisters and it's just one more year, the age being lowered one more year, it's probably going to result in another surge. Go check out my friend Caitlin's channel, Anticipating Christ's Return. I was talking to her earlier today, and she told me how she was part of that first surge under President Monson. It changed the course of her life, is what she told me. But anyway, what essentially what we're having right now is a double surge. The surge from President Nelson and his call out in General Conference, and now a lowering of the mission age. So it seems to me like everything's being kicked into a higher gear. It seems like it is the final phase. Let's go back to quotes, Second Coming. Let's take a look at this quote from President Eyring. This was just a couple days. Let's see, this was, October 16th. So just a couple days after President Oaks was set apart as president of the church. And President Eyring says, "I'm so grateful for the people whose faith I know will sustain us in this great work of the restoration and the final preparation of the Lord's church for his coming." The final preparation. He says, President Oaks is the perfect one to do the things that I know the Lord will want done. Well, it seems like part of that is lowering the mission age for sister missionaries. Let's see. We have this from Elder Neil L. Anderson. November 2025 Worldwide Devotional for Young Adults with Elder Neil L. Anderson and Sister Kathy Anderson. This was the one from Washington, D.C. And he says this: as his disciples in the very last days, preparing for his return. So the very last days. It's similar to those other quotes that I have, like the one from the 2018 Worldwide Youth Devotional, Hope of Israel, where Sister Nelson said, perhaps these days are more latter than what we realize. And then the most recent one, Elder Gerald Casse, the new apostle. This is Church News, November 7th, 2025. He says, ultimately, the work of the church involves bringing people closer to their Savior, Jesus Christ, and helping them be prepared for his second coming. And events occurring around the globe underscore how important that preparation is and show how close that day may be. You know, I could go on and on. I have plenty of other quotes that make it clear that we're at the end. This is the latter part of the latter days. What was the other one? These are the final preparations before the second coming. So doesn't it make sense that it would be an all hands on deck moment? I think that that's what we're seeing. I tend to think, if I were to guess, that it's the final team that's up to bat. There is one more thing to look at, actually. Let's go back to this. I have a spreadsheet where I have the age groups of the youth that were youth at the time of the Hope of Israel Worldwide Youth Devotional. So at that time, you had the 18-year-olds that were the men were starting to go on their missions that same year in 2018. Okay, like the first of that group. And then those born in 2001, the 17-year-olds going the next year in 2019, all the way to 2024. We're basically at the end of this group. I tend to think that this group is the Lord's Youth Battalion. And of course, I would include those that are going right now. But I wouldn't be surprised to find out that this is the core group. And now we're at the end. The last ones, the ones that were 12 years old, they started to go on their missions in 2024. And you could also include, I guess, the 11-year-olds that were going to turn 12 that year. So that would, let me just add that to 2007. I think that's still Generation Z. I don't know about that, but 2025 to 2027. Well, that's kind of an interesting age group. We've talked about the number 11 on this channel. I'm not going to go into that, but 11 born in 2007. And then as a group in general, they would be ending their missions in 2027, which happens to be the year that the Salt Lake Temple is going to be rededicated. So that's kind of interesting. But I think there's good reason to believe that's what's going on. It's an exciting time to be alive. It seems like maybe I was right about big changes. And I guess that begs the question, what's the next thing going to be and how soon is it going to be? Are we going to see more big things between now and General Conference? I don't know. If not, I tend to think there will probably be big things in General Conference, but we'll just have to wait and see. Sorry, I'm just like, it's so exciting. Doing this channel is such an exciting thing for me to witness all this and to like just really document it and see it play out, to see how church leadership is talking. These are exciting times. But okay, well, that's gonna be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.